That's a complex question, I must say, which really makes me give up what I had been jotting down in my notes and which makes me answer directly. Now, my problem is that the world is changing at a speed which is highly impressive. And although we have lots of experts and scholars who try and detect the direction and the results, the outcomes, no one is in a position of saying what will happen 10 years from today. Now, the only certain thing is that there is a general shift towards a rebalancing of well-being. And in the first place, we know that there was a strong lack of balance in Western world countries. Now, this is something which is getting straight once again. It's being rebalanced. In a couple of decades, hunger, the worldwide famine, has been reduced. And the scale is definitely very much smaller than a few years ago. And in many countries, Asian countries especially, we know that it has been possible to pile up sufficient assets and wealth so as to readjust the fundamental systems governing their countries, starting from the education systems and the research and development systems. We no longer are in a situation where, on the one side, we have the wealthy and rich Western world, which was well-educated, capable of promoting the best technologies as well. Nowadays, as a matter of fact, in many other countries, Russia is, to my own view, already a Western country, but already in many other Asian countries, this is something which is possible. Asian countries are growing, are advancing, progressing. And in less than probably a decade, we will see that the resources available to research and development, technological development especially, in all of these countries, Asian continent countries, is going to be exceeding the amounts made available by North America, United States and Canada, and the European Union. And obviously, this will bring about totally different scenarios, because the equilibria, the balance existing from the economic point of view, which is what allows us to make forecasts, is what will change expectations, hypotheses. The future scenarios, in other words, are going to change. And you probably know that expecting and making predictions about scenarios is what affects our choices, political choices, entrepreneurial choices, business choices, investment choices are going to be affected. Now, this is the first issue that we have to deal with. Right now, we are in the middle of a transition phase. And it is almost natural for rich and wealthy countries to feel besieged, whilst the formerly poor, ex-poor countries are sort of boosting up their own activities and accelerating. Now, if we have to consider the United States of America and the elections, the pending election system, we may find a new interpretation key and think that each one of the Italian citizens and all of the political top summit players well understand that they will no longer be the leaders of the world in less than a decade. Now, at this speed, Asia will be in a position of reaching more than 25 billions of, trillions of domestic product, gross domestic products against North America, which is going to be 15 after the Brexit from European Union. And in less than a couple of decades, we will see that the whole Asian continents will have the possibility of producing wealth and asset and thus bypass the Western world. This is going to be the result of the urbanization, the democratic procedures and processes that we well know, and the spread of new technologies that no longer can be stopped by borders, borders of countries, geographical borders. And whenever we are speeding up the additive manufacturing, there will no longer be a problem in terms of borders and duties, customs. There is a design, there is a planning, a project, a design, in other words, which will immediately, through the cyber world, is going to reach the hub of the 3D producer, and it's going to produce and manufacture the product. In the plastic sector, for example, there are some systems right now where there are problems not great problems, honestly, but there's going to be an improvement whereby we know that other processes will allow us to still have products that are highly resilient and resistant. Now, having this platform, the elements that need to be considered, and here I'm diving into the problem of our relations with Russia, because this is a transition period, as I said. Either we put right the relations, or we are running the risk of having beautiful meetings but never getting understood, never getting messages across. And the problem is one of intellectual property and ownership. It's not that you invest €1 billion and then somehow you think that this €1 billion needs not to be protected or be part of a stake as if that were just a normal commodity good. Now, it's on the basis of any such elements, i.e. the essential aspects of knowledge, development of relations. It is important for us to find a way to come to a clear-cut conclusion of our relations and a redefinition. Otherwise, we take so many directions, different directions, and whereby, thanks to the logic of the transfer of technologies, it is going to be possible to think that just anyone who's invested $1 billion on the next day will make it available, which is not true, as we well know. So then what to do? And here we come to the problem, to the knot. We have to have a political atmosphere which is highly positive. It goes without saying. And I believe that as far as these two countries, our two countries, there is such a propensity, there is such an inclination. The European Union, and we know that there needs to be some courage to do so. Well, what we are doing here is the evidence of the existence of good relations amongst our two countries, and relations were kept that way in dramatic moments. So we have to understand that, as I am convinced, no one can make a free gift to the other one, but rather we have to enter into partnership agreements that have to be crystal clear and long-lasting, so as to develop new technologies, new knowledge, new insight. I think that this is where is the crucial aspect that needs to be dealt with. There are many other things that have got to do with other issues which are less strategic, less important. So in our case, there is the possibility of having the possibility of going back and allowing for a discussion. And as Leonardo Finmeccanica Group, on the one side, I did offer that, I asked for that. There is a way to deal with the technological issues that are not being dealt with right now. It is true that we do have some chapters that won't be touched, such as the defense chapter, but many other things, such as the dual role technology, which could be placed back at the center of the debate, could allow us to sort of foresee or get a glimpse at least the fact that in the modern world, where there are no real physical borders, at least, or political borders, if you wish, because the information technology is by now overriding just everything and no one can stop it, it is going to be necessary to build up global value chains which, by just resting upon the so-called real asset, the fact of belonging to a system, for example, is in a position of understanding and seizing and getting hold of the highest levels, value chains at the top levels, so as to be competitive with the rest of the other competitors. And I believe that in this adventure, there still are some maneuvering room There is some maneuvering room, which is important, on the side of Russia, Italy, and other European countries. Now, this is to the advantage of the benefit that Europe could crop. Now, all of us Europeans have to understand that we are the only ones who are not growing. This is why we see the entire world as if it were in a crisis, but it's not so. The world is relatively alive. There is probably not going to be a typical Chinese expansion as we saw in the last century, but there are rhythms that are very high in terms of expansion. So we have to make this quantum leap towards a true unity, because having prepared the conditions for the joining in of 28 countries, thanks to the euro, so we either go towards the union, or this is going to be a straitjacket, an explosive straitjacket, because inequalities, internal inequalities are so many, and the common euro without any political shock absorber will bring about inequalities, disparities amongst those who started off from a strong position, i.e. without debts, and those who still have to pay them and high interests, because this is a way that will not allow us to fund and finance research and development. So in the end, we will see new capabilities and new potentials in the field of having equal weapons and equal tools for research and development. I believe that this is something that we have to deal with. If we don't, we will be having difficulties in finding solutions for the growth of this country. Now, yesterday, in a different press conference, I did take the liberty of saying that if in the United States, a country like California, a state like California is going to go bankrupt, then the Confederation is going to step in and help that country. That country is not going to be just ousted. And if there is a region or a state that's going to be highly indebted more than others, obviously there is going to be a north-south situation, which is what happened in Italy. But if this is not happening in Europe in a substantial way, and even the famous Juncker plan is finding difficulties in the rebalancing itself, then quite obviously the divides are going to be stronger and stronger. And this will also be to the effect of what is going to be the common policies of other external countries, such as sanctions. On the one side, it is possible to bear them, and in other cases or sides, it's not going to be possible. I believe that this is the true place where to still have new profitable relations, and as Leonardo Finmeccanica, we're doing that in the field of aeronautics, cyberspace, helicopters, and I do believe that this is the right moment to do something to relaunch our policies towards the same directions, those directions. So many thanks. You are a true entrepreneur, a businessman. You still talk about opportunities. You're looking for them. But in Russia, we tend to say only too often that those who don't want to do something look for an explanation. Those who are wanting to do that are trying to find opportunities. I'm looking at it from a different angle. Now, according to you, what kind of difficulties do we have right now? What is it that could prevent us from developing cooperation? Are there mechanisms maybe that are not perfect yet? Or are there hampers, obstacles of a bureaucratic nature? Only too often officers may say something and then other officers will backpedal. Now, I believe that this kind of reply entails a change in our speed, advancement speed, but the decision-making timing is much too long. We have to take a step forwards. We have to make leaps forward. We have positive experiences, but we have great difficulties in coming and getting results. Decision-making centers and hubs have to be better coordinated, better unified. They have to join forces, especially whenever referring to a set of agreements that have to be made and entered in the industrial fields. This is to make the operations more effective, obviously, the ongoing ones. And obviously, Rosneft, we know that this is something which is instrumental to strategic operations in Russia, the exploration of the seas, the Arctic seas, and on the other side, also in the Black Sea. I believe that that stands as an opportunity to prove and try and allow for higher flexibility and higher increased speed to all of these relations, trying to overcome bureaucratic stalls. And this is what will prevent us from reaching quick results, and in parallel to build up joint actions that will lead to technological development. Now, if only we could do that, it's going to be to the mutual benefit.